Over the sorry. Over the time, high blood sugar from diabetes damages blood vessels in the heart and blocks blood vessels leading to the brain. So it's double whammy. That causes high blood pressure leading to a stroke. More than 2 in 3 people with diabetes have high blood pressure. Another risk factor is smoking and secondhand smoke exposure. Why? Because it causes following damage: raising triglycerides in the blood and lowering high density HDL cholesterol, also called good cholesterol. Another one, making blood sticky and more likely to clot, which can block blood flow to the heart and brain. Also damaging cells that line the blood vessels and increasing the buildup of plaque, fat, cholesterol, calcium, and other substances in blood vessels. So those guys increase when you smoke, and then they just stick to the walls of the blood vessels. Another risk factor is obesity, accompanied by unhealthy diet and physical inactivity. There are 4 main types of cardiovascular disease. First is coronary heart disease that occurs when heart muscles blood supply is blocked or interrupted by buildup of fatty substances, atheroma plaque, it's called, in the coronary arteries. When atherosclerosis affects the coronary arteries, which are the major blood vessels that carry blood to the heart muscle, it's called coronary artery disease, and that is called #1 killer in Western world. Most of those deaths are from heart attacks caused by blood clots. Restricted blood supply to your heart muscle can cause angina, chest pains, and unfortunately, the older you are, the better you know what it is. But sometimes heart disease may be silent, not diagnosed until a person experiences signs or symptoms of a heart attack, heart failure, or arrhythmia. And these events happen, symptoms may include, well, heart attack is not a disease. Heart attack is a symptom of the coronary artery disease. With heart attack, you have a chest pain or discomfort, upper back or neck pain, indigestion, heartburn, nausea, vomiting, extreme fatigue, upper body discomfort, dizziness, and shortness of breath. Arrhythmia, it's like fluttering feeling in the chest, palpitations. Heart failure, same token, it's not disease, it's a symptom of the disease. Shortness of breath, fatigue, swelling in feet, ankles, legs, abdomen, neck pain. Stroke. Stroke occurs when blood supply to the brain is disturbed. Stroke. The main stroke symptoms can be remembered by the word FAST. F stands for face. The face may have drooped on one side. The person not may be able to smile, or their mouth or eye may have drooped. Arms. The person with suspected stroke may not be able to lift their arm and keep it raised due to weakness or numbness. Speech. The person's speech may be slurred or garbled. They may not be able to talk at all despite appearing to be awake. And T is for time. It is time to dial 911 immediately if you see any of these signs or symptoms. Another type of heart disease is peripheral arterial disease, also known as peripheral vascular disease. It occurs when there is a blockage in the arteries to your limbs, usually your legs. And last but not least is aortic disease. As you know, the aorta is the largest blood vessel in the body that carries blood from your heart to the rest of your body. The most common type of aortic disease is aortic aneurysm, which is where the wall of the aorta becomes weakened and bulges out. Well, I hope I didn't scare you enough to listen further. How about risk? You heard from your doctors about heart disease risk, so I will give you some reminder what it is, how it is calculated. Doctors in Canada and US use the Framingham risk score. It's a traditional now risk inventory-based scoring system that uses readily available data such as gender, age, total cholesterol here, high density lipoprotein, which is not here. Oops, sorry. Systolic blood pressure, it's here. It's up like high number, and cigarette use. And it's used to calculate the 10-year risk for cardiovascular events. It's based on the results of the Framingham Heart Study in 2008. It was validated in the US both in men and women. When we are talking about risk reduction, we assume the risk is calculated using the Framingham risk model. And without further ado, modern research and holistic approaches. So you know what we are talking about now, and we know that some catastrophic event, such as heart failure, may be a symptom, just a symptom for the heart disease. It may be a sudden catastrophic event that often has debilitating consequences or even results in death. According to former chair of nutrition at Harvard, for the most diseases contributing importantly to mortality in Western populations, we've long known that non-genetic factors, I like epigenetics, but non-genetic factors I'm talking about, often account for at least 80 to 90% of the risk that is preventable. We know this because rates of the leading killers like cardiovascular diseases and major cancers vary up to 100-fold around the world. When people migrate from low to high risk countries, their disease rates almost always change to that of new environment. Risk factor I mentioned earlier account for over 70% of your risk of having a stroke or getting colon cancer, more than 80% of coronary heart disease risk, and more than 90% of risk for type 2 diabetes. Modern research shows that prevention is a key. If you ignore the root causes of disease and neglect to prioritize lifestyle measures for prevention, your life is in danger. Unfortunately, even preventive strategies are now heavily biased towards pharmacology rather than supporting improvements in diet and lifestyle. And this is a worldwide picture. Ischemic heart disease is an umbrella term including angina, congestive heart failure, cardiac or myocardial infarction, congenital heart disease, coronary thrombosis. Can we do prevention holistically to change this awful picture? Treat the whole person, taking into account mental and social factors rather than the symptoms of an illness? Certainly. Here's the data from CDC regarding ischemic heart disease prevalence all over the world. The highest incidence of coronary disease in the most urbanized areas. So the darker the blue, the better. Canada, as you see, is actually doing worse than the USA. Eating mostly plant-based diet. India also is doing great. Equatorial Africa has the lowest incidence of ischemic disease. Why? Most likely because of the combination of plant-based diet, lots of walking and running, and moderate food consumption. Is it a trap? Is there an exit from this trap? Of course. In 1990 landmark study, Dr. Dan Ornish, and I hope you heard about him, proved that you could not just slow heart disease, our number one killer, not just stop heart disease in its tracks, but actually reverse heart disease. Open up clogged arteries, and without drugs, without surgery. Only with combination of a plant-based diet and exercise. Very simple exercise indeed, such as walking at least 30 minutes a day. Since then, millions upon millions have died totally unnecessary deaths. Commenting on this, I also would like to refer to 18 years of EPIC study conducted in Oxford, Great Britain, following up almost 50,000 participants. The study confirmed that fish eaters and vegetarians had 13% less risk of ischemic heart disease compared to meat eaters that we see here in the picture. But vegetarians had a 20% higher risk of hemorrhagic stroke, which is a warning. That's probably because vegetarians tend to have low intake of vitamin B12, and this could raise homocysteine, leading to the increase in risk of stroke. So the picture is not pleasant. Let's think about what we can do as intelligent human beings to reduce the risk. We used to think that heart disease was just an inevitable consequence of aging. Cholesterol and blood pressure just naturally go up as we age. Many people have heart attacks with no risk factors. Not much you can do about it. All these are now disproved by massive data. There are rare genetic conditions that give people high cholesterol no matter what they eat, but such genetic defects occur in not more than 1 in 200 people. I actually have a friend like this, and he's nutritionist himself, and he became nutritionist because of his condition. This means that most persons with atherosclerosis acquire it by what they put in their mouths. The Interheart study showed that for men and women, old and young, and in all areas of the world, potentially modifiable factors like diet, exercise, and smoking accounted for 90 to 92% drop in risk of having heart attack and for 80% of diabetes and stroke risk reduction. I spoke about drugs. What about them? Pharmacological therapies, including cholesterol-lowering statin drugs and blood pressure pills, typically reduce cardiovascular disease risk only by 20 to 30%. Too bad. So even on 70 to 80% of heart attacks still occur. The Harvard Health Professional follow-up study looked at the effect of lifestyle changes in people already on medications. Even those on cholesterol and blood pressure-lowering drugs may be able to get further 78% drop in risk by eating and living healthily. The choice is not diet or drugs. By scientific findings, cardiovascular medication should be used as adjunct to, not just a replacement for, healthy lifestyle practices. Okay, cholesterol. Everybody's talking about cholesterol. Let's talk about now. So why does medication drop risk just by 30% tops? Let's try to understand. It's actually easy. Coronary atherosclerosis is a chronic progressive disease that begins early in life and slowly progresses over several decades before a catastrophic event. Over 100 prospective studies, involved more than 1 million people, have demonstrated that those with higher LDL levels are at high risk for our number one killer. One-to-one relationship. However, the average age in starting a cholesterol-lowering drug and conducting trials is about 63 for people exposed to a lifetime of circulating LDL cholesterol. So no wonder that trials show that drugs taken for a small period of life reduce risk by only 20 to 30%. There was a study that looked at young men aged 18 through 39 and followed them for up to 34 years. Their cholesterol levels in young age predicted long-term risk of heart disease and death. Men in their 20s and 30s have total cholesterol even just under 2 milligrams per deciliter. It corresponds to 2 millimole per liter in Canada. Have a substantially longer estimated life expectancy, around 4 to 9 years longer than those who is over 240, over 2.6 in Canada. So I'm giving American measurements because the studies conducted usually in the US, and I compare them to Canadian. So to get to Canadian, you divide by 100, and that corresponds to what your doctor says. In terms of feasibility of treatment with statins, a study was considered unethical, just like you couldn't ethically set up a study in which half of the kids are made to start smoking to see if smoking really does cause lung cancer. But you can conduct an observational study where you don't have a control group and follow people with rare genetic mutations that result in unusually high cholesterol or unusually low cholesterol, providing you can segregate confounding down diet and lifestyle factor. Confounding means factors that can interact with data, making them skewed in that of this direction. About 1 in 40 African Americans have a mutation that drops their LDL cholesterol even from about normal 130, which is 1.3, 1.6 in Canada, down. The study group didn't eat healthy for starters, and still ended up with low coronary heart disease risk, just in their genes. More than half had high blood pressure, lots of smokers and diabetics. Yet those with genetically low LDL levels still had a significant reduction of the incidence of coronary heart disease, even in the presence of all these other risk factors, like about 88% of heart disease gone. The astonishing finding was that the heart disease risk in these individuals was reduced by more than 80%, whereas the same 20 to 40% decrease in LDL from drugs only reduces risk like 30%. Makes perfect sense. The guys with the mutation had low levels during their whole lives, not just small period, whole lives. They didn't just start taking some pill when they were 60 years old. Therefore, primary prevention strategy is to promote keeping LDL cholesterol levels as low as possible, beginning as early in life as possible, and sustaining these low levels of LDL cholesterol throughout the whole lifetime. And that's just what healthy diet can do for you. Canada Food Guide. Let's talk about, we live in Canada, right? So what we can do here. Elevated LDL cholesterol levels are also caused by the lack of consumption of fiber found in all whole plant foods. Since we evolved to eat enormous quantity of fiber, when we don't, our LDL ends up much higher than it is supposed to be. Since all plants have fiber, not all animals have saturated fat and cholesterol. In general, all whole plant foods tend to lower our risk of dying from our number one killer. And all whole animal foods tend to raise our risk. And that's where Canada Food Guide recommendations stem from. There are, however, processed plant foods that do raise cholesterol, hydrogenated vegetable oil, for example, and animal foods they don't, say skim milk and egg whites. In animal models, animal proteins alone increase cholesterol, but in people, it's more animal fat and cholesterol, at least in adults. Well, there was a study of 1 to 3-year-old kids that found that replacing the milk protein by wheat protein dramatically lowered cholesterol in those kids, and then when they were back to milk protein, it rose back again. So this is kind of sort of ethical, and it proved our point. And next is Mediterranean diet. Actually, Canada Food Guide recommendations seem very much like the Mediterranean diet. It's a primarily plant-based eating plan that includes daily intake of whole grains, olive oil, fruits, vegetables, beans, and other legumes, nuts, herbs, spices. Other foods like animal proteins are eaten in smaller quantities, with the preferred animal protein being fish and poultry. Also, the pyramid shape suggests the proportion of foods to eat, say more fruits and vegetables and less dairy foods, does not specify portion size or specific amounts depending on physical activity and body size. So all those research papers and study count with qualitative rather than quantitative conclusions. Eating plan on Mediterranean diet includes emphasis on healthy fats. So the main point of Mediterranean diet is replacement of animal fats with healthy fats. Olive oil is recommended as a primary added fat, replacing other oils and fats like butter, margarine. Other foods naturally containing healthy fats are highlighted, such as avocados, nuts, and oily fish like salmon and sardines. Among these, walnuts and fish are high in omega-3 fatty acids. Choosing fish as a preferred animal protein at least twice weekly, and other animal proteins like poultry, eggs, and dairy, cheese, yogurt, in smaller portions either daily or a few times a week. Red meat is limited to a few times per month. Also, recommendation is choosing water as the main daily beverage. Let me toast it. Stressing daily physical activities through enjoyable activities. This year alone, there were more than 17,000 papers published about Mediterranean diet, 70 papers a day. So where did it come from? Why it is so good? Let me give you some history. Maybe you would understand. After World War II, the government of Greece asked Rockefeller Foundation to come in and assess the situation. Impressed by the low rates of heart disease in Greece, nutrition scientist Ansel Keys, after whom K rations were named actually, initiated his famous 7-country study in which he found the rate of fatal heart disease on the Greek island of Crete was 20 times lower than in the United States. They also had the lowest cancer rate and fewest deaths overall. What were they eating? Their diets were more than 90% plant-based, which may explain why coronary heart disease was such a rarity. So the heart of the Mediterranean diet is mainly vegetarian, much lower in meat and dairy, which is considered the major culprits in the diet because of their saturated fat content. Unfortunately, no one is really eating the traditional Mediterranean diet anymore, even in Mediterranean. The prevalence of coronary heart disease skyrocketed by the order of magnitude in a few decades in Crete, blamed on the increased consumption of meat and cheese at the expense of plant foods. Further on, I would address benefits of some food and nutrients, but first let's have a glance of how your daily food may like. I do think it's good. Like you have your oats, you have your walnuts, you have your cinnamons, you have your blueberries. I'm going to be talking about them extensively. You have your beans, you have your grains, rice, you have your salad, you have your salmon. So you eat everything, well, in moderation if you want to keep your weight, but you also maintain your good health. Okay. Why you maintain your good health is, oh, I'm sorry. Because of Mediterranean diet strength. Why is it protected? Some studies show that those who eat plant-based diet have more plant-based compounds like aspirin circulating within their systems. Polyphenol, phytonutrients, and magnesium found in dark green leafy vegetables, as well in fruits, beans, nuts, so berries, and whole grains, are associated with significantly lower risk of dying. Mediterranean diet is also low in heme iron found in blood and muscle that acts as pro-oxidant and appears to increase the risk of coronary heart disease. Plant-based non-heme iron appeared safe. So which nutrients give strength in Mediterranean diet? First of all, it is magnesium. High blood levels of magnesium were associated with almost 40% reduced risk of sudden cardiac death. Magnesium is a mineral that plays an essential cofactor role in over 300 enzymatic reactions in the body. It's also fourth most common mineral in the body. However, around 2 in 3 people in the Western world don't get recommended for optimal health daily amount of magnesium. Magnesium is contained in whole grains, leafy green vegetables, legumes, meaning beans, peas, lentils, also soy and nuts, as well as seeds. These are major components of Mediterranean diet. Considerable body of evidence indicates that a high intake of dietary magnesium may favorably affect metabolic and inflammatory disorders, including many of our top killers like diabetes and heart disease. There have been 2 studies prospectively examining magnesium supplementation. Harvard nurses study, probably your doctor refers to it all the time. It's published in 2011. And another one is the atherosclerosis risk in communities in 2010, covering multi-ethnic population of thousands of men and women taking magnesium pills. The magnesium requirement to reduce cardiovascular disease is 400 milligrams per day for adult men and 320 milligrams per day for adult women, which is contained is about 2.5 cups of cooked, not raw, cooked spinach. 1 cup is 160 milligrams of magnesium. Unfortunately, the average person consumes only 0.1, like a little bit, that much, cups of greens a day. Magnesium supplementation is a good thing, and the best protect your heart are magnesium taurate and glycinate. If you go to the health store, there are different labels: glycinate, diglycinate, bisglycinate, and they're actually the same magnesium atom bound to 2 glycine molecules, and they are all good to protect your heart. I list here other types of magnesium, but this is beyond the scope of our presentation. Okay, garlic. Who doesn't like garlic? As Hippocrates wrote, garlic was a medicinal food, but just don't laugh. It was to treat non-existent entity called displacement of the womb. So was he wrong? Garlic is known as a blood thinner that can potentiate action of aspirin. That's what's good about it. Those who eat more than a clove a day do seem to have better artery function than those who eat less. Heart disease patients were randomized to receive either garlic powder or placebo tablets twice daily for 3 months. Just 3 months. And those in the garlic group got a significant boost in the artery function. 50% increase in the artery function, taking only 800 milligrams of garlic powder a day. That's just a quarter teaspoon of garlic powder, less than a penny a day. There were studies for fancy garlic extract supplements, which costs big bucks. They do not exert this kind of power. Dozens of studies on garlic also show that garlic can reduce cholesterol levels by more than 16 points. Again, that's in US and in Canada is 0.16. In a randomized controlled trial, the progression of the cardiovascular disease appeared to slow and stall with garlic peel. Quarter teaspoon of a simple spice, available pretty much everywhere, may be considered as a adjunct treatment for atherosclerosis, the #1 killer. Also, systematic review meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials demonstrated garlic has statistically significant and clinically meaningful effect on both systolic and diastolic blood pressure, reducing the top number by nearly 7 and the bottom number by about 5. May not sound like a lot, but reducing diastolic blood pressure, the bottom number, by 5 points can reduce the risk of stroke by about a third, heart disease by 25%. Another favorite topic of mine is blueberries. I was talking about polyphenols as a strength for Mediterranean diet. And you heard about those red wines that you have to drink because of their polyphenol content. I disagree personally because there are better things around. And I think they're tasty. Blueberries were shown to help control bad cholesterol, blood pressure, blood sugars, body weight, diabetes, and inflammation in more than 20 randomized controlled trials on thousands of people. That happens because of their polyphenol content, namely brightly colored pigments, anthocyanins. In some recent studies of berries, it was shown that the increased intake is significantly associated with reduction in risk of coronary heart disease by between 12 and 32%. Again, the same token, this lower ranges from studies on all the individuals, and the greater reduction of risk was noted in younger populations. So the earlier we start eating berries, the better. Even blueberry tea can lower cholesterol in kids genetically predisposed to high cholesterol. 30% drop from powdered blueberries in a tea bag dipped in hot water for 5 minutes, comparable to statin, but the effect is not permanent. The effect is not permanent with statin either. In a study, it took 3 months for the tea to start having significant effect. Then, of course, 6 months after, they stopped drinking the tea. And they were back to where they started. Too bad. Another finding is that for every 15 milligrams increase of anthocyanins a day, scientists found 17% drop in risk, cardiovascular disease risk. Doing simple math, 100 milligrams per day reduce the cardiovascular risk almost 100%. This is less than half a cup of blueberries a day. Even the fatty sweet blueberry muffins give some boost to artery function. A randomized controlled trial of cooked blueberries, raw blueberries, or no blueberries at all was conducted. They fed people buns made of white flour, eggs, butter, and salt, all good stuff, right? and get the gradual drop in artery function over the next 6 hours. It's already not good. But add an equivalent of a cup of wild blueberries to the same bun, and instead you get a big boost in artery function, almost as you had just mixed the blueberries with water. In comparison, about the same amount of strawberries failed to rescue artery function from likes of 2 cheese pancakes with whipped cream, sugar, syrup, egg, and bacon. What is quite heavy load to bear, and rather than relying on blueberry magic, maybe it's safer to avoid this type of meal altogether. On this slide, you can compare anthocyanins content in different berries, and you see that blueberries lead the pack and followed blackberries, plums, red grapes. So red grapes somewhere in the middle, not like on top. Okay, and now interesting topic, I think, controversies. If you ask Dr. Google, almost everything seems beneficial for heart disease, and almost any medication carries a heavy load of side effects. But is it really so? Let's talk about absolute versus relative risk reduction first, so we understand what we are talking about. Say the risk of certain event is 5%, and this lady on the left is totally unhappy. Lifestyle changes and behaviors reduce it to 4%. This happy lady on the right. The absolute risk reduction is 1%, 5 minus 4, almost statistically negligible, I would say. But relative risk reduction is 20%. And this number can be used to visibly inflate benefits whenever you need it. Statins. Based on meta-analysis of a bunch of statin trials, it looks like the relative risk reduction with statins is 25. We're talking about 20 to 30%, like in the middle, 25. For simplicity, let's consider these events independent, like your risk of heart disease and risk reduction with statin. Then you can multiply probabilities. For those at average risk, say about 10%, let's consider statin over the next 10 years. Of 100 people, 10 may have a heart attack doing nothing. For 100 took a statin every day for those 10 years, though, 8 would still have a heart attack, okay, 7.5. But 2.5 to be precise, will have been spared. So there's like 1 in 40, 2.5 to 100 chance taking the drug would help you avert heart attack over the next decade. And if your personal 10-year risk of heart attack or stroke is 5%, by Framingham model, like the doctor ran the test and the calculations, and they came with 5%. Then taking statin would take this down from 5% to 3.75%. Again, I would say statistically negligible, for absolute risk reduction of 1.25%, meaning there is like 1 in 80 chance that you would avoid a heart attack or stroke taking the drug over the next 10 years. But if your baseline risk gets higher and higher, even though you have that same 25% risk reduction, your absolute risk reduction gets bigger and bigger. For comparison, high 20% baseline, it's still medium, but medium high 20% baseline risk, you have 1 in 20 chance of avoiding a heart attack or stroke over subsequent decade if you take the drug, statin drug. As 0.25 multiplied by 20 is 5, 5 to 100 is 1 to 20. The spilled benefit of statin therapy also that it had showed some promise for fighting viral infections. So it's probably not relevant, but nevertheless. Downsides. Downside are some gastrointestinal side effects. Muscle aching, stiffness maybe 5%, reversible liver inflammation in 2% of population, very rarely life-threatening muscle damage called rhabdomyolysis, that can cause extreme muscle pain, liver damage, kidney failure, and death. But the risk of very serious side effect is extremely low, perhaps in 1 in 20,000. And if your risk reduction in 1 in 20, so probably you have to consider it. There are also some studies showing increase in breast cancer rate, and that's funny, from 0.3 to 4.1%, which is 1,260%. But after taking out confounding factors that appeared to be a fluke. Another good one we were talking about today is vitamin D. So scientists assume that the possible reason for low coronary disease incidence in some areas is sun exposure and resulting imbalance of vitamin D in the body. When vitamin D supplements were actually put to the test in randomized controlled trials, often fail to support a direct vitamin D benefit for cardiovascular disease, like heart attacks and strokes. Maybe higher levels of vitamin D are just in people who exercise outside. There are more than 20 randomized controlled trials to test vitamin D for heart disease. They found no benefit for heart attacks, strokes, and overall mortality. Actually, maybe low vitamin D levels are a result of cardiovascular disease rather than cause. If you have chest pain, you're probably not out in the sun running around. And the good news, of course, is that the heart disease is preventable, reversible, and requires significant cleaning up in your diet. Vitamin K. The name of vitamin K stands for coagulation in German. And this is fundamental role of vitamin K, helping the blood to clot. There are actually several forms of vitamin K. The most important are phyloquinone K1 and menaquinones K2. The difference in absorption rate, tissue distribution, and bioavailability. Vitamin K1 is present in leafy greens and fruits, and its absorption increased by oils, but it's very low absorption rate. Human body, the most concentration of K1 is in the liver. In the contrary, K2 is present in fermented food, meat, and dairy produced and distributed all over the body, except liver. In terms of absorption, vitamin K2 has a longer half-life in the circulation, absorption rate, superior absorption rate compared to vitamin K1. Researchers studied vitamin K supplementation for the prevention of cardiovascular disease because there is a vitamin K activated protein in the blood that binds up excess calcium and helps prevent calcium from being deposited into the walls of the arteries and stiffening them. So the hypothesis was, if you give people extra vitamin K, will that protect people's arteries from calcification? Unfortunately, vitamin K supplementation did not improve vascular stiffness or other measures of artery health. In fact, one study on patients with diabetes found that calcification tended to increase after supplementation with the type vitamin K found in fermented soy food called natto. I put it here. That's all about hype about vitamin K. Iron. Iron is a double-edged sword. Don't absorb enough, we risk anemia. Here's recommendation how much iron the body requires for hundreds of enzymatic reaction. And for our age group, it's like 8 milligrams per day. What happens if we absorb too much? We're increasing our risk of colorectal cancer, heart disease, infection, neurodegenerative diseases, and inflammatory conditions. Other conditions that have been associated with high iron intake include Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, arthritis, and diabetes. Not all iron is created equally. Heme iron is a type of iron found in blood and muscle in animal foods like red meats, fish, and poultry. Has superior absorption rate. Heme iron gets its name from the heme protein attached to the lone iron atom. The heme is the blood protein hemoglobin to this protein. bound form of iron. Non-heme iron is the iron found in plant foods like green leafy vegetables, beans, and nuts. Non-heme iron is not combined with the heme protein, and this difference is the reason for body reduced ability to absorb non-heme iron. Slow absorption allows you to eat more iron-rich plants without worrying about iron toxicity. The detrimental effects of heme iron are thought to be because it oxidizes cholesterol with free radicals and thus can act as a pro-oxidant, contributing to the development of atherosclerosis. The risk has been quantified as 27% increase in coronary heart disease risk for every 1 milligram of heme iron consumed daily, and for a long time, of course. And broiled steak contains 9.2 milligrams of heme iron, so you understand why we talk about the dangers of broiled meat. The same has been found for stroke risk. High heme iron, animal iron, but not non-heme iron, was associated with an increased risk of stroke and diabetes type 2, 16% increase in risk for every daily milligram heme iron consumed. The same for cancer with 12% increased risk of every milligram heme iron exposure. Good news is that soy protein, calcium, black and green tea, vitamin C, or zinc inhibit iron absorption. So the reasons are different, like zinc shares the same receptor with iron and it's antioxidant, so it inhibits iron absorption. Vitamin C is antioxidant and it inhibits iron absorption. Polyphenol in black and green tea inhibit iron absorption. On the other hand, cast pot and pans may improve iron absorption, so be careful. Blood donation for those with hemochromatosis, those who have genetically higher level of iron in the blood, I was told help reduce iron level. Another hot topic today is intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting is a dietary approach that has become increasingly popular in recent years. It's a collective term for various meal timing schedules that cycle between voluntary fasting and non-fasting over a given period, at least 12 hours. So 12 hours you eat, 12 hours you fast. There are several methods of intermittent fasting, including alternate day, today I fast, tomorrow I eat, periodic fasting, like this month I'm gonna do fasting, next month I won't, and daily time restricted feeding, like I eat from say noon to 6 and don't eat from 6 to noon. However, this method of eating has actually been practiced by humans for centuries in hunter-gatherer societies. Fasting also has been historically used by medicine purposes by ancient Roman, Greek, and Chinese civilizations. Intermittent fasting results in changes to hormonal patterns and energy metabolism in the body. With prolonged fasting after a meal, the supply of glucose is reduced, obviously. To meet energy needs, the body will break down glycogen, the form of glucose stored in the liver and skeletal muscles. The body also uses gluconeogenesis, a process in which the liver produces glucose from non-carbohydrate sources. Improvements in blood pressure and triglycerides have been noted in intermittent fasting regimen, though this is probably due to reduction in body fat, since the effect appears to be weight loss dependent. Alternate day fasting can improve artery function also, but it does depend on what you're eating on the non-fasting day. In the study of alternate day diet high in saturated fat, artery function worsened despite a 15-pound weight loss. It improved as expected in a lower fat group. The decline in artery function was presumed to be because of the pro-inflammatory nature of saturated fat. Concern has been raised about the effects of alternate day fasting on cholesterol. because it was noted that after 24 hours without food, LDL cholesterol may temporarily bump up. The explanation is it's so much fat being released in the system by the fasting. An immediate negative effect on carbohydrate tolerance, and this is point where you don't gain or lose any weight, may stem from the same phenomenon, the repeated elevations of free fat floating around in the bloodstream. After a few weeks, though, LDL levels start to drop as the weight comes off. In the largest and longest trial of alternate day fasting, 100 obese men and women were randomized into one of three groups. Two weight loss groups, one alternate day modified fasting, another is continuous daily calorie restriction, and a control group that was instructed to maintain their regular diet, say 2,000 calories a day. That's all. Calorie restriction group would have started at 1,500 calories a day every day, and the intermittent restriction group would alternate between 500 and 2,500 calories a day. This is the same amount of calories consumed, right? The same overall calorie cutting in both weight loss groups. They both lost about the same amount of weight, but surprisingly, cholesterol effects were different. In the continuous calorie restriction group, the LDL dropped as expected compared to the control group as the weight dropped. But in the alternate day modified fasting group, the LDL level did not drop. At the end of the year, the LDL cholesterol in the intermittent fasting group ended up 10% higher than in constant calorie restriction group, despite the same body weight loss. Given that LDL cholesterol is a prime causal risk for heart disease, a significant blow against alternate day fasting. Another hype was about potatoes being deadly. Everything is bad for you, right? According to Dr. Google. In the US, potato consumption was associated with increased mortality, 65% increased risk of dying from heart disease, 26% risk of fatal stroke, and 50% increased risk of dying from cancer, and also increased risk of dying from all causes put together. However, this has disappeared after adjustment for confounding factors. In other words, it wasn't just potatoes. Potato eaters must just smoke more, drink more, eat more saturated fat, something. Once you control for these factors, the link between potatoes and death disappears. One word of caution: chill, reheat, and enjoy. Potatoes become low glycemic index delicious food. Enjoy. Fish oil. Everybody's talking about fish oil. Everybody is selling fish oil to make some little money. So is fish oil a snake oil? It's an interesting question. It's definitely one of the most used supplements marketed as a health cure-all. No wonder there are multiple trials to prove it. The benefits of fish oil for general brain health, like cognitive function, proven scientifically in multiple studies. More likely due increased blood flow to the brain. Good. But an extensive trial suggested that regular exercise coupled with moderate dose of high DHA fish oil improves high density lipoprotein HDL cholesterol, but not the major risk factor, LDL cholesterol, total cholesterol, systolic diastolic and blood pressure. That's a blow. As we already mentioned, the highest stroke risk in vegetarians was found in longitudinal 18-year EPIC Oxford study. So it would be beneficial to check if fish oil supplementation can reduce it. That would be great. Unfortunately, 28 controlled trials, 28 did not find any benefit for stroke. And that's all. That's all I was going to talk about today. Any questions?
Thank you, Larissa. Thank you. Yeah, we have a few questions.
Yes.
Is Shanaz or my helper? Where is my helper? Cyrus, yeah, my helper. How are you?
Hi, Sharon.
Can you unmute yourself?
Thanks,
Yes.
Azim. Larissa, how are you?
Good. How you doing, Sharon?
I'm good. It's good to have you again. Very informative session. We're learning lot of things from you every day. So please continue coming. I have a few questions on the chat, so I'll go through them.
Okay.
When would you take magnesium?
Okay, so my personal experience is very safe if you find type of magnesium which doesn't cause you run to the bathroom more often. I would say start from the quite low dose, say 125 milligrams per day, and use it 3 times after the meal, like in the morning, midday, and at night. And if you feel fine or you feel better, try to increase the dose. The dose up to twice daily recommended amount is safe. If you take too much, though, there is relationship between magnesium and potassium. So when magnesium raises, potassium also raises, and you are in some very small risk by hyperkalemia. So if you think that your heart all of a sudden beats too slow, like you feel not right, you probably took too much, but up to twice. So for the ladies of our age, that would be about 600 milligrams, totally safe.
Okay, I think the next question, I think you mentioned that what strengths of magnesium do we need daily? I think you mentioned the men and women, so if you can repeat.
So I would say because magnesium is so important for our body, take combination supplement which contains magnesium citrate to support your kidneys, plus magnesium glycinate and malate to support your heart. Like combination supplement, 120 milligrams a day, 3 times a day would do wonders for you.
And the other comment is cooked garlic is just as good. And the other one tied to that is does garlic in food help? So can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Say again.
Cooked garlic is just as good. And does garlic in food help?
Okay, so cooked garlic, the data concern raw garlic. I read some study about raw garlic versus baked garlic, and if you bake it for 15 minutes, it loses about 20% of its force. So say, so what I was doing, like, okay, I was overdoing, just bake whole head of garlic for 15 minutes and then squeeze it out with olive oil. But if you take a lot, it can be a little bit taxing on your liver, and it can be a little bit difficult for your gastrointestinal tract. So if you can take it baked for 15 minutes, not longer than that, it's as good as raw. But if you want easy way out, is 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder a day.
Larissa, so if you put, like, let's suppose you buy fresh garlic, you mince it, and then you use it in your cooking, what impacts are those?
0.
Oh, okay.
So when you mince it, you lose some like the components in the garlic oxidize. When you cook it with your food, say for 2 hours, it's even more oxidation. When they do, why garlic powder is kind of better, because they dry or freeze dry garlic, and then they ground it. Like when it's dry, they ground it, and they keep it in the dark place so it doesn't oxidize that much. You probably noticed if you keep garlic, even like powdered garlic, too long, it becomes a little bit orangey and it hardens because it oxidizes.
Okay. The next one is, do olives help in heart disease?
Yes. This is a good fat, right? As not like if you, well, who doesn't like good piece of meat? Meat with olives. That probably would be too much. If you replace, like, take lean animal protein plus olives, it would be perfect.
The next one is, can you please show the different types and benefits of magnesium?
Okay, just a second. Let me show. Okay, where is this slide? Yeah. Can you see it? Oh, no, sorry.
Yeah.
So magnesium glycinate is the best for cardiovascular disease. Taurate, if you have migraines, anxiety, insulin sensitivity. Citrate is a little bit can help constipation and help with kidney stones big time. Sulfate helps with asthma. Malate, migraine, depression also, and magnesium oxide is the best as laxative, but the least bioavailability.
Okay, the next question I have, Larissa, is please explain more on, I think, thrombosis.
Can I see the question?
I don't know if the spelling is correct.
Huh?
Thrombosis.
Okay, so why there is a thromb? There are at least two reasons. There is a plaque which narrows. Okay, I think I have this picture. Yeah. So you see here, there is a plaque formation, right? So if your blood is highly coagulated, there is a higher probability that a little bit of coagulated blood will close this blood vessel together. And here is your thrombosis. So if this is a vessel which leads to your heart, you're having heart attack. If this is aorta, it's aneurysm, just explode. If it leads to your brain, you have a stroke. And if it leads to your limbs, to your legs, it's peripheral thrombosis, which bulging arteries, and you have numbness and you have pain in your legs. Did I answer your question of like, or there are some other questions here?
That was the only question. The other one now, next question I have is, how long does one have to be away from work after the statin treatment?
Say again?
How long does one have to be away from work after the statin treatment?
Well, statin treatment is for the rest of your life. Like you take the statin and you go to work.
So it doesn't keep you away from work then, eh?
No. So if you have, if you have one of those side effects which are really minor and reversible, even rhabdomyolysis is reversible actually. Then you go to the doctor and she would decide what to do with you. But mostly there will be nothing there will be just reduction of your risk.
Okay, the other one I have is magnesium gel, good for your skin.
I cannot comment on this really. I don't know, like though guilty as charged, I'm using cosmetics. Our skin is covered with a thick layer of dead cells. So I don't know if anything or any time can help the state of dead cells. The only one thing which can help is exfoliating and feeding the, like there are several layers of skin, right? And feeding those live layers with the good nutrients. That's all can help. Maybe application of hyaluronic acid will keep those dead skins from appearing too fast. But other than that, logically, there is nothing which can help your skin. Buying cream, on the other hand, is a very pleasant experience. And if this cream smells good, it's even more pleasant. So it's more mental rather than helping your skin.
Okay, thank you. The other one I have a comment. It says fresh sliced organic garlic with warm water will help reduce cholesterol.
Say again?
Fresh sliced organic garlic with warm water will help reduce cholesterol.
Right, if you don't cook it. Like with warm water, slice it, take it, like not the water, but you have to consume the whole plant, right? Not just the water, whole plant. If you consume water and clove of garlic, it will work up to this promise.
Okay, and is one clove of garlic good enough, or should you limit it?
Yes.
Or okay.
If you can tolerate more, I cannot tolerate one clove of garlic, to tell the truth. It's hard on your gastrointestinal and everything hurts. But some people can eat it like without problem.
And the other one is somebody's asking, they have thin blood already. Is garlic and turmeric good for them?
Okay. Garlic can potentiate, as it was said, garlic can potentiate action of blood thinners. So before you start on garlic supplementation, even eating garlic, I would suggest to go and talk to the doctor if she thinks it's safe for you.
Okay, thank you. And the other one is olives are very salty. So can you rinse them and then eat them? And how many a day?
This I don't know because all olives are different. Olive oil, not olives. 1 tablespoon 3 times a day is safe and good for you. So if you use like specific type of olives, use help from Dr. Google to find out how it's equivalent, and equivalent of 1 tablespoon of olive oil is quite safe.
And the other one is blueberries and strawberries are very seasonal. So if you use frozen ones, is that okay?
Yeah, it's perfect. Actually, sometimes frozen are better than fresh ones, because say you buy blueberries which were grown in Peru, with all due respect to our logistics, they probably lost like 90% of their good things. But if you buy frozen, especially wild, like wild blueberries frozen in Walmart is about $8, 1 kilo bag. So it's like a steal. They are frozen and at the place where they are picked up, right? So there is more nutrients in those frozen blueberries than in those like in plastic box, which was shipped from Peru and spent in container for 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you. The other one is if somebody has problem handling magnesium, it
Right.
affects their bowel and stuff. So what is a substitute?
Okay, there is no substitute. you have to check what type of magnesium you're taking. Like if your magnesium oxide citrate, say citrate is the cheapest one, makes you run, then avoid. Buy magnesium malate, check malate. If it works, okay. But magnesium glycinate should not make any GI problems. Like just try magnesium glycinate, can like this 180 pills at $20 or less. Try it and like find out what salt of magnesium causing your GI problems.
Thank you. And which vitamin would you recommend for healthy memory?
Healthy memory, attending webinars, I guess. This is the best vitamin. I can do actually, what I can do, this is a big question. I can do a webinar on the latest and greatest vitamins. I work with a doctor in the USA who is up to this research, and 90% of what I know, I learn working with him. So the research is amazing. People try to research each and every food. I can talk about it, but in terms of memory, I don't know. Like try land main mushrooms. Another thing is, again, they use it in Europe. I haven't seen, like, they use it in Europe. I haven't seen any research because mostly research money in the US, but you can go to the health store, get vinpocetin. Vinpocetin, if you heard of it. It's not a vitamin, but it's nootropic, and this is over the counter. See if it works.
Okay, the other question I have is, are turmeric supplements okay to take?
Turmeric supplements are great to take, but there are two things about them. If they actually did studies which found that they're toxic for liver. So if you use turmeric as a spice, you will not use as much as one pill contains. They're toxic for liver. And if you are using dose which is not hepatotoxic, they may interact with your blood thinners. Same token, right? So if you are using instead of blood thinners, maybe fine, talk to your doctor. But if you're using them with blood thinners, this is not a safe proposition.
The other question is, are statins good or bad?
Okay, let me show the picture again. Okay. And you will make decision for yourself. Yeah. So the answer, it depends, right? So you have to figure it out. If you take a medication which brings you serious side effects and your absolute risk reduction is 1%, I would say it's statistically negligible. So when you talk to your doctor, they have to know your absolute risk reduction, not relative. Relative risk reduction with statins is 25%. Absolute maybe 1%. Do I want it? If you are in the medium to high risk group, which is 20%, your absolute risk reduction will be 5%, which means 1 in 20 chance to avoid heart attack in the next 10 years. and prolong your life and be happy and well, I would say it makes sense. But the answer again depends where in the risk scale you are now. So it's very individual decision.
Okay, the other question I have is which vitamins are good for osteoporosis?
Which what? Sorry.
Vitamins are good for osteoporosis.
Sorry. I don't understand. Which what?
Do you want me to repeat that or?
Yeah. Cyrus, repeat it again.
Yeah, which vitamins are good for osteoporosis?
Okay, right. That's a difficult question, actually. So let's start from a little bit far. Why we are scared of osteoporosis? You're scared of osteoporosis because your risk of fractures when you fall increases, right? I don't remember the numbers. I have to check some papers, but pretty much osteoporosis by itself does not increase your risk of fall. The risk of fall increases with you being not active and not having enough muscle corset around your bones. So your muscles is what feed your bones and what keep your bones intact, right? So when you fall, your muscles will prevent the bones from cracking. This is one thing. And the difference actually is in order of magnitude between the risk of fall when you exercise or when you don't exercise, and has nothing to do with vitamins. Now, if you think I am too weak to exercise, 30 minutes walk a day will make significant difference. In terms of supplements, that's also a tricky question because osteoporosis is reduction of the density of the bone, and bone matrix is made of many minerals like magnesium, zinc, calcium, phosphorus, to name a few. So to maintain density of your bone nutritionally, you need to consume lots of protein. Animal protein is good. Plant protein is great, but you have to consume lots of protein and maybe even more than you need for your age. So for our age group, it would be, if I'm not mistaken, 56 grams of protein a day. So don't skip your proteins. If you don't like meat, eat lentils. Calculate how much and eat it. Another question, why you have osteoporosis? Because your body does not absorb some of those minerals. You need to create favorable conditions, and you need, okay, I sound like a broken record, take magnesium. And for the bones, I think it's better magnesium citrate, so it may cause some runs. You have to take zinc. You have to make sure you consume enough calcium. If you have kidney stones at the same time, consume magnesium citrate with your calcium containing foods. Vitamin C is vital. Without vitamin C, your bones will not build. And of course, if you can be outside to absorb enough vitamin D, and plus in our latitude like 1000 of vitamin D daily, that would be wonderful. So in terms of being outside, I have bad news for you. If you go outside, then slash like sunscreen on you, it will not work. To absorb 1000 milligrams of vitamin D a day, you need to be on the sun for an hour without sunscreen. So you have to be outside, say 8:30 to 9:30 or 9 to 10 the latest, to avoid sunburns. But you have to be on the sun you have to take vitamin D to preserve your bones. And if nothing of this works, there are medications which doctor gives you, but it's when it becomes critical. Did I answer your question?
I hope